Good evening. Tonight we see a different side of London, not the pretty postcard city, but a place brought low, not by war, but by the very air it breathed. You might think of cozy fires and misty streets, but history sometimes smells of sulfur and fear. Imagine being there now. Your first breath would shock you. Your first or a struggle for air. Before we begin, remember to like and subscribe. If you are enjoying this, tell me in the comments where you are watching from. I love seeing our global audience. Now turn your phone over, keep the volume low, and let's go back in time. To understand December 1952, you must first know the city it struck. London, 7 years after World War II, was a place of tired contrast. It was the heart of a fading empire, a huge city of 8.5 million, still healing from the Blitz. The skyline showed both ruin and resilience. St. Paul's Cathedral stood tall, above patched roofs and old, sooty bricks. The air held a gritty hope, but it also always held coal smoke. Coal was the lifeblood of this London. It heated 1 million small homes. It powered trains from Paddington Station. It fueled the great power plants by the river. The British economy struggled with war debt. The government pushed a campaign of austerity. This was not just policy, it was daily life. The best British goods and coal were sold abroad. To earn American dollars, what was left for the people at home was the low-grade remains. For heat this meant a poor soft coal, full of sulfur. They called it nutty slag. It was cheap and plentiful. It burned with a dirty, bitter smoke. Every morning across London, millions of chimneys exhaled. A grey-brown plume filled the air. Sulfur dioxide, hydrochloric acid, and tiny bits of torrent soot. This was the city's morning ritual. The smell was the smell of home, of warmth against the cold, damp winter. It was the scent of survival, and with the smoke came the fog. London had a long history with fog. It was in books and paintings, a part of the city's character. For centuries, damp air from the North Sea, mixed with smoke from countless fires. It made a thick, clinging blanket, called a pea souper. The name came from its sickly colour. This was the London of Charles Dickens, where fog was its own character. It was the London of Sherlock Holmes, where villains hid in the swirling glue. The painter Claude Monet loved the strange light. He painted Waterloo Bridge fading into haze. For most Londoners, the pea souper was just a part of winter. It was a nuisance. Its low traffic dirtied laundry and made your throat tickle. People dealt with it stubbornly. They found their way by memory, by the feel of the pavement, by the shape of a corner pub. They used simple tricks. A scarf over the mouth, a hand outstretched to avoid lampposts, listening for tram bells or newsboys. It was a manageable problem. The city lived with its dirty air, like it lived with its winding streets. Public health officials had worried before, but it was seen as a necessary cost. To be the greatest industrial city, smoke meant a factory was working, a home was warm, a nation was recovering. It was in a strange way the smell of progress. So in early December 1952, as coal lorries rumbled through streets and smoke rose from chimneys, no one thought the gathering fog was anything new. The city was quietly confident. It was utterly unprepared to be slowly suffocated by the air it breathed. The weather that week was not unusual, each part common for a British winter, but their combination was deadly. A perfect trap of stillness and cold. The main cause was a huge high-pressure system. It drifted from Europe and sat over London like an invisible glass lid. This system made air sink and compress. It created a temperature inversion. Normally air near the ground is warmer. It rises, taking pollution away. This keeps the air clean. When the high pressure reversed this, it made a layer of warm air high up that sat on cold trapped air at ground level. The natural chimney was kept. The coal's dirty air could not rise. The lid was on. Making it worse, there was no wind. The center of the high pressure was calm. For days the air over London did not move. Where the vanes were still, flags hung limp. The usual breezes were gone. Smoke from chimneys and factories had no way to escape, not up and not sideways. It was trapped in a shallow, cold pool, filling the Thames River basin. Every bit of soot, every chemical emitted now stayed there, building up thicker and thicker. The timing was terrible. The days before were clear and very cold. Londoners burned more coal for heat. The big power stations ran full capacity. Their stacks pumped out tons of pollution. The home fireplace became an accomplice. Across the city in millions of homes, cheap sulphurous coal was shoveled on fires. The total effect was huge. Each day, the city pumped into this sealed air 1,000 tons of smoke particles, 2,000 tons of carbon dioxide, 140 tons of hydrochloric acid, 14 tons of fluorine compounds, and most deadly, 370 tons of sulfur dioxide. This mix began to change in the cold, damp air. The fog was made of tiny water droplets. The sulfur dioxide dissolved into them. Through chemistry, it became sulfuric acid. The fog was no longer just smoke and water. It was a vast floating chemical mist, an acid aerosol that stung eyes and burned lungs. London's geography made it worse. The city sat in a broad river valley. The cold, heavy, polluted air sank into it, like water in a saucer. Surrounding hills helped contain the poison. Through habit, necessity, and bad weather, the city had built its own poison gas chamber, and for 4 days it would sit inside. The trap was set, simple and devastating. Invisible to millions below, they only knew it was cold, so they stoked their fires higher, unknowingly feeding the monster above. On Friday, December 5th, Londoners woke to a thick winter fog. It seemed normal at first. Office workers tightened scarves and went out. The weather center was not concerned. They predicted it would lift by midday. They forecast tragically wrong. This was not the old familiar fog. As morning went on, the mist did not thin. It grew thicker and denser. Its color changed in a strange way, from white to a sickly yellow tan, then to a dirty brown. In the worst areas to a greasy black. It was as if the sky was curdling. The experience was overwhelming. The smell was the first assault. Not the comforting scent of coal smoke, but a sharp chemical stench. It caught in the throat and made you cough. A raw metallic taste of sulfur. Eyes and nostrils stung constantly. The fog had a texture, not a clean wet mist, but a greasy filthy aerosol. It left a sticky black grime on everything. Windowsills, railings, doorsteps. Pedestrians found colors blackened after a short walk. Hair felt tacky, skin felt oily. A fine arcs that settled everywhere. A constant reminder of what they breathed. Then came the darkness. By midday, in this great city, daylight was almost gone. The sun, a weak red disk, vanished. An unnatural twilight fell. Street lights came on glowing dimly. Their beams reached only a few feet. Visibility shrank fast. First you could see across the street, then only halfway. Soon people could not see their own feet. The world shrank to a tiny bubble. Everything beyond it simply ceased to exist. This blindness crashed the city's system. London depended on constant flow. It began to seize up. The bus network went first. Drivers could not see the curb, let alone the vehicle ahead. Some conductors walked in front with flares, guiding buses inch by inch. A medieval scene in a hellish landscape. It was futile and dangerous. By Friday evening almost all buses stopped. The railways did little better. Signalmen could not see their lights. The system broke down. Delays piled up, then cancellations. Hundreds of thousands were stranded. Even the London Underground suffered. The heavy smog sank down stairwells, filling stations and tunnels with haze. Platform edges became invisible. Above-ground drivers peered sideways for signals. The city's social life dissolved. At Sadler's Wells, theatre and opera stopped. The smog filled the auditorium. Audience could not see the stage. Singers could not see each other. Cinemas closed, projectors could not reach screens. Sporting events were called off. The Smithfield livestock show turned grim. Prize-winning cattle showed distress. Veterinarians worked frantically. For many animals it was too late. They choked to death where they stood. For people it was disorienting. Londoners, proud of knowing their city, got lost yards from their own doors. Familiar landmarks were erased. The world was a featureless, muffled void. Sound changed too. City S roared ambient, isolated noises. Unseen feet near by coffer, bicycle bell. A city rendered blind and mute, paralyzed by its own atmosphere. As Friday night fell, it was just a deepening of the blackness, and the smog kept thickening. The paralysis grew. By midday, Friday London was clotting. The iconic red buses seized first. In the east end visibility was less than a yard. Drivers saw only a swirling void. The world ended at the Radiator Grill. An absurd ritual unfolded citywide. Conductors stepped into the gloom, holding flares or paraffin lamps. They walked inches ahead of the buses, shouting directions back to the driver. A medieval procession. A 10-ton beast moving slower than a walk. Journeys stretched from minutes to hours. Timetables became fiction. On the Isle of Dogs a bus was abandoned. A great red ghost by the roadside, invisible until the smog lifted days later. London Transport had to admit defeat. Services were cancelled entirely. Hundreds of thousands were stranded. The city's surface stopped working. People walked instead, shuffling forward, hands outstretched, feeling for walls and railings, navigating by memory and touch. The great machine was rendered primitive. The low ground was a different chaos. The underground air was clearer but strained. Platforms at major stations became dangerously crowded. Masses waited for infrequent trains. Above-ground sections were just as blind. Fogmen placed detonators on tracks to give drivers audible signals. But it was a losing battle. Signals failed, points froze. The tube schedule collapsed. Trains that ran were a suffocating lie. The air inside thick with damp wool and anxiety. For many the tube was a trap, not refuge. Above ground, mainline railways fell silent. At Paddington Station, the grand roof sheltered stillness. Departure boards showed only cancellations. Trains for Bristol, Cardiff, Cornwall did not leave. Dense smog sat on the tracks, obscuring signals. Stranded travellers slept on benches in coats. The station echoed with announcements of more delays. I surrendered to the air itself. At King's Cross and Euston, it was the same. Arteries from the north were severed. Air travel was the most helpless. At London Airport, later Heathrow, not one plane took off or landed. Pilots circled, unable to find the city, diverted to Manchester or Amsterdam. Anywhere but the shrouded capital. The city was cut off by land, rail and air. The deepest silence fell on the river. The Thames, London's lifeline, ceased to move. For centuries, its traffic was the city's heartbeat. Now that heart stopped, all shipping halted. Great ships bound for docks lay at anchor. Crews stared into a grey wall. Tugboats and barges were moored silent. River police could only tie up and wait. The Thames became a dead channel. Its surface flattened, oily, reflecting no sky. The busiest port in the world was shut down, not by war or strike but by weather. London was isolated, a sprawling, sightless island, marooned in an ocean of its own making. It had gone blind, and in its blindness it stopped breathing. The modern metropolis defeated by simply not being able to see. This blindness did not stop outdoors. The smog was an insistent guest. It ignored boundaries between outside and in, made of sticky, certain acid droplets. It did not just block the view. It penetrated the city's fabric, through cracks in windows, down chimneys, under doors, through floorboards, into ventilation system. Within hours, indoors and outdoors blurred. A thin, greasy black film settled on all surfaces. Furniture white in morning was coated again by lunch. The air inside tasted the same. a sharp metallic taste of coal and chemicals. It caught in the throat and clung to the tongue. Curtains and carpets held the foul smell, a constant reminder of the siege. For Londoners, there was no escape. They lived and slept in diluted poison. They woke with pillowcases grey from their own breath. Lighting a gas stove showed the air's state. The flame burned a sickly orange, not blue. Starved of oxygen, life had to continue or try. People navigated homes by touch, movement slow and cautious. Public communal life disintegrated. Shared experiences were extinguished. At the theatre, the opera La Traviata was on. As the first act went, singers became hazy. Their voices seemed from a swirling mist. The conductor could barely see the violinist. The audience, in upper circles, saw only a glow. The performance was abandoned. The manager walked on stage and said the show could not go on. The fog inside was too thick. Culture itself was cancelled. Cinemas across London faced the same. Projector beams became visible solid cones of light, but the image on screen was a blurry mess. Audiences watched the air more than the film. Screenings halted. Hollywood escapism, no match for London's reality. Life retreated into the small, private, isolated. The famous London pub became a strange refuge. Once inside with the doors shut, light from the bar reached only a few feet. Patrons huddled close, voices muffled. A man at one end could not see the other end. It was a automatized social gathering. In this universal darkness came opportunity for crime. The rule of law depends on visibility. A policeman is a deterrent because he can see. In the Great Smog, a constable was as blind as anyone. He could hear a footstep, but see nothing. Criminals noticed this. Crime rates spiked. A perfect environment for petty theft. Purse snatchers melted into glue. Burglars' shapes matched the shadows. Reports of pedestrians laid into blind alleys and robbed. Attackers vanished before a cry for help. One group tried to break into a bank vault, thinking no one would see them. The smog created profound vulnerability. People felt along the street isolated and exposed. Anyone could be just beyond their vision. The psychological toll was immense. Londoners used to crowds were utterly alone. Even in the densest parts of the city, the familiar urban symphony was gone. The rumble of traffic, distant chimes, shouts of vendors, replaced by an unnerving, muffled silence. Sounds that came were distorted. A cough could be from anywhere. A distant, unseen bell, shuffle of feet, right beside you but 10 yards away. The city had lost its geography. Trafalgar Square could have been a country feat. A man got lost on his own street. A profound disorientation, stripping away the familiar, leaving cold, damp, suffocating darkness. Inside and out, the city was not just a place to live. It was an atmosphere to be endured. A malevolent presence in every corner. At first the feeling was irritation, stinging eyes, dry throat. Londoners knew fog, even peace suppressed. It was part of the city's character. The reaction was dry complaint and dark humor. But by Saturday, the second day, complaints changed. Irritation turned sinister. Coughs became deeper, harsher, wetter. Rattling coughs from deep in the chest. For the healthy it was unpleasant. For the vulnerable, it was a fight for life. The smog, stagnating in still air, underwent a deadly chemical change. Vast sulfur dioxide from chimneys reacted with water droplets in the fog. It turned into sulfuric acid. Londoners were not just breathing smoke. They were inhaling a corrosive mist, a direct chemical attack on the lungs. Bronchial tubes, inflamed and constricted. The body made mucus to protect airways. This clogged the narrowed passages. Breathing became a conscious difficulty. Each breath a shallow, painful gasp, bringing not oxygen but more poison. The first to succumb were the vulnerable, the very old with worn-out lungs, the very young with developing systems, and a vast group with pre-existing conditions. Chronic bronchitis was common, called the English disease. For them the smog was a death sentence. Already inflamed airways constricted completely. They began to drown on dry land in their own homes. By Saturday evening, health services felt the first tremors. Doctors on house call stepped from one crisis to another, walking through blinding fog, little black bags in hand, finding entire families sick, elderly gasping in armchairs, lips and nails turning blue from lack of oxygen. Doctors could offer little, no cure for the air itself. They advised patients to stay indoors and rest. A bitter irony, when indoor air was also toxic. Then the wave hit hospitals. A trickle became a flood. People arrived at casualty departments, on foot, led by relatives or in slow cars. The official ambulance service was a victim too. With zero visibility, drivers could not navigate. Response time stretched from minutes to hours. In a desperate move, porters from Smithfield Meat Market were recruited, men who knew city streets by heart. They used their own vans, someone walking ahead to guide them, ferrying the sick and dying to hospitals. Inside hospitals was controlled, then uncontrolled chaos. Wards filled, then corridors. Patients sat on chairs, lay on stretchers, leaned on walls, all fighting for every breath. The sound was a terrible chorus, wheezing, gasping, deep racking coughs. The smog had come inside here too. Nurses could not see from one ward end to the other. They tripped over unseen equipment, identified patients by sound of their breathing. Doctors' faces, etched with exhaustion, moved case to case. Demand for oxygen skyrocketed, but getting fresh cylinders was a logistical nightmare. Delivery vehicles trapped in the same gridlock. Initial diagnosis was severe bronchitis or pneumonia. The sheer scale was baffling. A plague of breathlessness. Medical staff saw the first mass casualty event from pure air pollution in a modern city. There was no precedent. The Ministry of Health was slow to react. Initial report seen as localized issues, an exacerbation of usual winter illness. No one in Whitehall grasped the magnitude. No citywide emergency declaration. No coordinated public health warning. The message to the public stayed muted. Avoid exertion. For thousands, the exertion of breathing was already fatal. By Sunday, the third day, the situation was critical. Undertakers reported a coffin shortage. Florists ran out of funeral flowers. The death toll climbed silently, invisibly. These were not dramatic public deaths, but quiet, lonely deaths in bedrooms and wards. An elderly pensioner found in her chair. A baby dying of respiratory failure in its cot. A middle-aged man whose lungs gave out. The smog's suffocating grip tightened. City authorities seemed as blind to the medical catastrophe as citizens were to the streets. The air meant to give life was now taking it, on an industrial scale, and the fog showed no sign of lifting. The air itself was the enemy. This was not a simple smoke fog, a classic London pea soup. This was different. An active airborne chemical event. A silent, indiscriminate, molecular assault in the lungs of every person breathing. To understand the paralysis, you must understand the weapon, forged in 1,000,000 hearths and 1,000 furnaces. The raw material was coal, not good, clean anthracite, but cheap, soft, sulfur-rich coal, the post-war staple under rationing. Every lump shoveled into a grate was ancient compressed sunlight, and a chemical time bomb. On December 5th, 1952, they all went off at once. Burning this coal released the usual clouds, certain carbon dioxide, but its most insidious payload was sulfur. In the fire's heat, sulfur atoms bonded with oxygen, creating sulfur dioxide, a colorless choking gas. The scent nearest struck match. Normally this gas would rise and disperse, diluted by winds, a minor pollutant, but there were now no normal circumstances. The anticyclone put a lid on London. The air did not move up or sideways. A static captive atmosphere. Sulfur dioxide and soot pumped into this sealed chamber, trapped concentration growing every hour, with every shovel of coal. The fog was the catalyst. London's fog was not mere water vapor, but a grimy, industrial haze. Each microscopic water droplet formed around soot. The air filled with countless tiny suspended spheres. Sulfur dioxide gas dissolved into this saturated environment. It infused the fog, turning each droplet into a tiny chemical factory. The gas molecules reacted with oxygen, a process sped up by other pollutants. Nitrogen oxides, trace metals from industrial smoke. Sulfur dioxide became sulfur triacetate. When sulfur triacetate meets water, it becomes sulfuric acid. The Great Smog was not just fog. It was a dilute airborne acid bath, a mist of vitriol. Every one of trillions of fog droplets was a microscopic bead of corrosive acid. This made it a killer. Inhaling was not breathing smoke and damp air, but a fine aerosol of powerful acid. First effect was irritation. Acid attacked sensitive nose-throat bronchial membranes, triggering body defenses. Airways constricted, trying to block poison. Membranes made thick mucus to trap particles. For a healthy person, this meant hacking coughs or throat-streaming eyes. Unpleasant but survivable. For the vulnerable, the very young, the elderly. Anyone with asthma, bronchitis, heart disease. This chemical assault was a death sentence. Their bodies could not cope. The acid did not just irritate, it destroyed tissue, burned delicate bronchioles, inflamed tiny air sacs alveoli, where oxygen exchange happens. The body's defense became a fatal trap. Constricted airways, already narrow from illness, clamped shut. Thick, desperate mucus meant to protect filled what little space was left, creating a sticky, impossible plug. The person drowned on dry land, suffocating from inside out. Their own lungs a battleground. The air they needed to live was destroying them. The scale of chemical release was staggering. Each day, burning coal pumped into stagnant air. 1,000 tons of smoke particles, 2,000 tons of carbon dioxide, 140 tons hydrochloric acid, 14 tons fluorine compounds. The true killer, the agent of mass casualty, was 370 tons sulfur dioxide, converting our into nearly 800 tons sulfuric acid, suspended in air waiting to be inhaled. A perfect, silent, brutally efficient weapon. No army to deploy, holding an entire city hostage. London's air had been turned into a play. Nowhere was this poison's power clearer than in the grand halls of Earl's Court. As the smog tightened its grip, the city celebrated British agriculture. The Smithfield Show, a prestigious showcase of finest livestock. Farmers brought prize animals, results of generations of careful breeding. These were not ordinary farm animals, but champions, the best of the best. Aberdeen, Angus, Hereford and Galloway cattle. Massive sleek coats groomed to a sheen. Pictures of robust health. Symbols of rural strength and national pride. Housed in the huge echoing exhibition hall. They were also worth a great deal of money. By Friday, the first full day of smog, handlers noticed something wrong. Air inside the vast drafty hall grew thick and acrid, catching in the throat. Cattle, normally placid, grew restless. A low continuous coughing rippled through pens. At first dismissed as stress from travel, but as Friday turned to Saturday, the situation escalated dramatically. Air inside Earl's Court as dense and yellow as outside. Visibility dropped to a few feet. Smell overpowering the sulphurous metallic stench. Coughing of animals became deeper, more desperate. Great shuddering gasps for air wrecked their bodies. Huge liquid eyes wide with panic and pain. Veterinarians on site baffled, faced with hundreds of prime healthy animals, all struck down by mysterious respiratory ailment. They checked feed, water, bedding, found nothing. The enemy was the air itself. Magnificent developed lungs of these creatures, capable of powering huge frames. Now their greatest vulnerability, drawing airborne sulfuric acid deep inside. With every labored breath, respiratory systems systematically destroyed from within. Desperate measures taken. Handlers soaked cloths in whiskey and rum, tied over animals' noses like makeshift gas masks. A futile attempt to filter poisoned air. Pungent smell of alcohol mixed with smog and animal distress. But acid mist, defined to pervasive. passed through saturated cloths as if not there. By Saturday evening the first animal died, a prize bull worth a small fortune. Pride of its owner collapsed in its pen, suffocating. A profound shock. Soon another followed and another. Seen inside Earl's Court, a surreal nightmare. In murky yellow, gloom illuminated by weak electric lamps, casting hazy halos in dense air. Silhouettes of men moved frantically between pens, trying to comfort dying beasts. Sounds harrowing, rasping, wheezing breaths of hundreds struggling, panic shouts of keepers, low moans of creatures in final agony. One by one champions of British agriculture fell. Over the weekend, death toll mounted. Of 350 cattle exhibited, over 60 seriously ill. 12 died right there in the hole. Immense carcasses, a grim testament to Ayer's toxicity. Dozens more so badly afflicted slaughtered after the show. One veterinarian described post-mortem lungs, completely black, inflamed and sodden, as if chemically burned. The tragedy at Smithfield was a uniquely public demonstration of the smog's lethality. While thousands of Londoners died quietly at home, their deaths private, slow to be registered. Death of prize-winning cattle was news. Valuable assets publicly displayed. Their demise concrete, measurable, undeniable. A stark, brutal yardstick for the poison in air. If smog could kill a 1-ton Hereford bull in its prime, what was it doing to an elderly pensioner with bronchitis? Or a baby in its cot? Image of those magnificent animals suffocating in pens. Stripped away any notion this was just another fog. A clear, unambiguous warning under dim exhibition hall lights. London's air had become a killer of terrifying, indiscriminate power. The city was not just inconvenienced, it was under chemical attack. Yet in corridors of power at Whitehall, response was profound, surreal indifference. Men charged with governing the United Kingdom for crucial first days of disaster, utterly oblivious to its scale, largely unconcerned with what they did know. Prime Minister Winston Churchill, late 70s, a titanic figure leading second peacetime government, concerns grand strategic global, preoccupied with Korean War, growing nuclear threat from Soviet Union, Britain's precarious economic position. The notion that London weather needed his personal attention would have seemed faintly absurd. His Minister of Housing and Local Government, Harold Macmillan, future Prime Minister, a vain, unflappable Edwardian gentleman, known for calm theatrical demeanor. The crisis, as it slowly unfolded, simply did not register. Initial reports filtering up through civil service, treated not as emergency, but administrative nuisance. When MPS first raised concerns about fog severity, official government line dismissive. This was, they insisted, simply weather. Unpleasant certainly, a classic London pea souper. A natural phenomenon. It would pass. Notion of public health crisis brushed aside. No mechanism for real-time mortality tracking. System slow, bureaucratic, paper-based. A doctor would sign F certificate citing bronchitis, pneumonia, heart failure. Certificate went to local registrar. Weeks before anyone in central office go had it, thousands of slipped. Salt terrifying statistical spike revealing truth. In the moment all government had were anecdotes. And anecdotes easily dismissed. On Monday, December 8th. City and fourth day of paralysis, thousands already dead or dying. Matter raised in House of Commons. Response from Parliamentary Secretary to Ministry of Health. A masterpiece of detached understatement. He acknowledged fog inconvenient and a rise in number of deaths, but assured House no cause for alarm. Not prepared to go any further. Government's primary concern not public health, but public order and economy. Priority: keep trains running, move goods. Prevent capital grinding to complete halt. Human cost secondary, almost abstract consideration. Governmental inertia born of complex mix. Genuine ignorance. Science of sulfur dioxide converting to sulfuric acid in fog. Not widely understood even by experts. Deep-seated political reluctance to act. To acknowledge smog man-made disaster caused by coal smoke, admit a terrible problem with no easy solution. British economy and life ran on cheap dirty coal. It heated homes, powered factories, generated electricity. Any meaningful action regulating fuel types, forcing industries to install expensive scrubbers, creating smokeless zones, fantastically expensive, politically toxic, mean confronting powerful industrial lobbies, telling millions what fuel to burn and own home, for a conservative government ideologically committed to free enterprise, minimal state interference. This was anathema. Far easier to do nothing. Blame weather, wait for wind change. Even shocking news from Smithfield's show did little to stir Whitehall from torpor. Harold Macmillan, when later pressed in memoirs, recalled the event with characteristic detached amusement, noting his own ministry blamed for death of cattle. No sense of urgency, no dawning horror. Government sealed in own intellectual anti-cyclone, as impervious to reality on streets as city was to clean air above inversion layer. Churchill himself, man who rallied nation with sorry rhetoric against Nazi Germany, seemingly deemed an old man, lifelong cigar smoker with own respiratory frailties. Smog reportedly left him unwell, but he made no public statement, offered no words of reassurance, initiated no emergency response. The great war leader, savior of nation, seemingly uninterested in silent war, waged against his own citizens by air they breathe, focused on a speech about country's economic situation. Contrast stark. While Londoners choked in dark, Prime Minister worried about pound sterling. Government's failure to grasp magnitude of Great Smog in its opening days, not conspiracy, but something more troubling. A complete failure of imagination. Could not conceive that modern industrial city brought to knees people killed in thousands, not by bombs or microbes, but by something mundane and familiar. Smoke from own chimneys. So as undertakers ran out of coffins, florists ran out of flowers. Official position of His Majesty's government remained one of calculated calm. It was just fog, and fog eventually clears. By Saturday 6th of December, mechanisms of London began to fail, not with bang, not with dramatic crash, but with slow grinding seizure. The city, great intricate clockwork of millions moving parts, choked on its own breath. The tally had begun, not an official count, not yet. No one to count, no one collate figures meaningfully. A tally kept in hearts of ambulance drivers, in ledgers of undertakers, in exhausted minds of hospital registrars. First signs this was no ordinary fog, no simple Lund unparticular, came not from meteorologists or government, but from men and women dealing in quiet, everyday business, of life and death. London Ambulance Service, proud efficient organization, rendered almost entirely impotent. A call for help, once guarantee of swift response, now desperate plea cast into void of thick yellow-black air. An ambulance dispatched from station in say Lambeth to terraced house in Brixton, journey of minutes normally, now epic voyage into unknown. Driver window wind down despite biting cold, acrid air. Leaning far out of cab, eyes straining to see curb few feet away. Beside him, or often, walking slowly in front of crawling vehicle, another attendant held a torch, not modern battery flashlight, but often simple rag, soaked in paraffin wrapped on stick. Primitive flickering flame held aloft, like medieval processional. This tiny guttering point of light, their only guide. Fragile charm against suffocating totality of gloom. They followed tram lines, iron grooves and road. Textual map for tires. Navigated by memory, counting side streets. By echo of own engine against wall could not see. Journey should take 10 minutes, stretched rather than 2. All the while in back of vehicle a life slipping away. Wheezing breaths of bronchitis, patient becoming shallower. Failing heart of elderly men, giving final tired beats. Crews could hear them but could do nothing to speed journey. Sailors becalmed on sea of poison. In many cases arrived too late. Little flame of torch-illuminated doorway. Family member stood face mask of grief shaking head. Call cancelled, patient gone. Ambulance would turn around. Slow painstaking 3-point turn middle of invisible street. Begin blind, crawl back to station. Another casualty logged not by name, but by futile aborted mission. Sometimes ambulances themselves became casualties. Running into abandoned cars, mounting curb, becoming stuck. Red lights flashing uselessly into mode. Silent pulsing distress, signal seen by no one. As ambulances failed, city's dead began to accumulate. A practical problem, logistical challenge city built to handle. City like London in 1950, too accustomed to predictable rhythm of death. Entire industry ecosystem of professionals built around this act. But smog broke this rhythm, shattered it. Daily number of deaths in London typically around 300. By Saturday more than doubled. By Sunday tripled. System began to buckle under sheer, unexpected weight of dead. First to feel strain, undertakers. Small family-run businesses mostly. Nestled in high street side roads. Discreet dark painted fronts, familiar urban landscape. Men who prided on quiet dignity, impeccable service. But dignity luxury city no longer afford. Telephone in back office of funeral parlor in Illingston or Stepney. Began to ring, did not stop. Calls from families, voices strained with grief, panic. From hospitals where morgues designed for handful of bodies. Now overflowing. Dead placed in corridors, chapels, any cool available space. Covered only by sheet. Hospitals needed them, gone, needed space. Undertaker take down details, promised do his best. Face impossible series of calculation. His hearse navigate streets no better than ambulance. Simple collection from hospital mile away. Became half-day perilous expedition. When did manage to collect body, where put it? Own small mortuary, already full, no more room. Call competitors men usually vied with for business. Now comrades in shared crisis. Answer always same, full, no room. We're all in same boat. Then came second more critical shortage. Coffins. Demand stable for generations suddenly exploded. Small workshop produced 5-6 coffins a week. Now receiving orders for 20, 30, 40. Craftsmen working by dim, hazy light, single bolt. In sawdust strewn shops could not keep up. Ran out of oak, thin pine. Ran out of brass handles, silk linings. Entire supply chain seized up. Timber could not be delivered to workshops. Finished coffins could not be delivered to undertakers. Grim product piling up could not reach desperate market. Families told delay of a week, perhaps 2. Loved ones remain where they were. Normal rituals of grief, viewing of body. Comfort of swift dignified burial all suspended. Dead in holding pattern just like living. With shortage of coffins, shortage of flowers. Final bleakly poetic twist. City killing citizens with airborne poison. Could no longer produce traditional floral tributes for funerals. Flower markets like Covent Garden shrouded in smoke. Cut flowers arriving from countryside wilted in toxic air. Petals turning brown limp before sold. Florists who would stock overwhelmed. Wreath sprays, simple bouquet. Bottles soon's made. Soon shops bare. No more flowers in London. City running out of symbols of remembrance. This grim tally, not a number, but series of cascading failures. System breaking down link by link. Ambulance driver could only offer apology. Hospital porter placing another shrouded body in cold hallway. Undertaker phone ringing off hook. No coffins to offer, no space to house dead. Carpenter working hands raw to build simple wooden boxes. Not enough. Florist standing in empty shop. Tell grieving son, no white lilies found. Each small private tragedy. Moment of professional failure, personal despair. Multiplied by thousands across vast sprawl of city. Became signature of catastrophe. Quiet suffocating plague. Paralyzing modern metropolis inside out. City not just dying. Its very ability to process death died first. For long days, 5 suffocating nights. London held its breath. By Monday, 8th of December, Strange, exhausted fatalism settled over population, world reduced to few feet of visibility. Too far walls of room, too sound of own ragged coughing, sun-forgotten myth, clean air, distant memory, city patient, an induced comb of vital signs flickering weakly. Then Tuesday morning, 9th of December, something changed. Not visible at first, a feeling. Subtle shift in atmosphere, new quality to silence. High above blanket of filth. In cold clear strata of upper atmosphere. Stubborn high pressure system holding city hostage, almost weak. Finally began to weaken. Brisk northwesterly wind borne in clean emptiness of Atlantic. Began push eastward across British Isles. Cavalry arriving silently in night. Early hours Tuesday. Gentle persistent pressure began to the surface. Of great stagnant pool of smog. Like giant invisible hand gently pushing lid off sealed container. First notice people living on high ground. Hampstead, Highgate. Woke, saw strange pale light at windows. Not daylight, not yet, but absence of absolute, oppressive blackness. Looking out, see tops of houses across street. Then chimneys, then whole roof light. Smog not lifting so much, being scraped away top down. Rolled back like filthy carpet. Down in city basin change came slower, but unmistakable. On streets people walking to work or attempting to. Felt on faces a breeze, genuine moving current of air. Cold, damp, but fresh, clean. Tasted of nothing, which after days breathing chemical soup, tasted like most exquisite nectar. Took deep, tentative breaths. First time in days did not feel like swallowing mouthful, grit acid. Change moved through city, like tide. Great Trent stairs appeared in fabric of fog. Buildings suddenly loom out of gloom. Familiar Portland stone facade, shocking solid presence in world-rendered ethereal. Red double-decker, bus-marooned days side of road, seemed impossibly vivid. Then first time in 5 days London saw sky. Pale watery winter sky, canvas washed out grey-silver. But it was there. Sun appeared, not brilliant orb, but with shimmering disk, smudge of buttermilk behind thin veiled cloud. Yet, effect electric. People stopped straight, looked up, faces tilted towards heavens, blinking in unaccustomed light. Collective unspoken moment of deliverance. City of 8 million taking first full clean breath. Great mass polluted air, toxic, dome 15 miles across, hundreds feet thick, pushed inexorably eastward, flowed down Thames estuary. Vast invisible river of poison. Over Kent, Essex marshes. Finally dissipated into cold and carrying expanse North Sea. By Tuesday afternoon, Great Smog of 1952 over. Air clear, siege lifted. Strange manic energy gripped city. Relief palpable, intoxicating. London began move again. Trams, buses, engines coughing back to life resumed routes. Underground, no longer city's sole lifeline. Returned normal rhythmic pulse. Shops opened, factories fired, furnaces again. Acts of Freeman thinking irony. City set about business cleaning up. What cleanup? City emerged from fog, monochromatic nightmare. Every surface coated greasy black sticky film. Grand white stone street poles, cathedral houses of parliament. Streaks soot as if buildings weeping tears ink. Statues, kings, generals, blackened gargoyles. Window panes opaque grime. Inside homes fine layer black dust covered. Every piece furniture, every plate, every book. Housewives embarked monumental cleaning effort. Sour metallic smell, smog lingered, carpets, curtains, weeks. As physical grime scrubbed away, more disturbing picture began to emerge. Sense relief, brief, giddy euphoria. Quickly replaced dawning, chilling realization. What just happened? City reconnected, news began travel. Newspapers able print, distribute, properly first time days. Began carry first tentative reports. Spoke transport chaos, cancelled sporting events. City brought standstill. Also spoke hospitals, soaring demand beds. Doctors, nurses overwhelmed. True accounting began, whispers, anecdotes shared. Over pint pub across garden fence. Everyone seemed knew someone. Elderly aunt struggling breathing quietly past Sunday night. Neighbour's child asthma sufferer rushed hospital, never came home. Work colleague not shown Wednesday. Family later confirmed succumbed sudden violent bronchitis attack. Not dramatic public deaths. Quiet private tragedies behind closed doors. Thousands homes across capital. Death. Attributed familiar causes. Pneumonia, cardiac failure, chronic bronchitis. Familiar, therefore easier, dismiss normal course winter. But sheer number stories impossible ignore. Undertakers now working around clock, clear backlog. Provided most stark evidence. Funerals booked, solid weeks. Cemeteries reported, unprecedented, demand burial plots. Long, slow-moving, cortege-esque black hearses common sight. Newly visible straits. Constant grim reminder Price City paid clean air. Collective sigh relief Tuesday morning premature. Air fresh fueled ghosts. London survived, now waking horrific realization. Just endured silent massacre. Deadly plague gutturally invisible until moment gone. Counting only just begun. First attempt quantify disaster came government. Specifically Ministry Health under new ambitious Ministry Ian MacLeod. Days following smog as anecdotal evidence mounted. Nervous press asking questions. Government needed number. Needed frame event place boundaries horror. Official narrative fills vacuum. Especially one public fear. Statisticians Registrar General Office put work. Did what statisticians do counted. Looked death certificates registered Greater London area. 5 days smog Friday 5th Tuesday 9th December. Compared figure average number deaths, same period previous years. Calculation straightforward, methodology simple. Counting immediate dead people whose deaths registered during event. Immediate aftermath. Figure arrived presented Parliament staggering enough. Approximately 4,000 deaths concluded attributed fog. 4,000 excess deaths 5 days. Put perspective more total Londoners killed. Any single week blitz Second World War. Number 4,000 became official story. Shocking, yes, tragedy of course. Also finite manageable number. Allowed event classified freak occurrence. Terrible singular catastrophe. Act God meaty. Orological anomaly. Combined city smoke create uniquely lethal brew. Government narrative sober acknowledgement. Coupled quiet reassurance once generation event. Committees formed, reports commissioned. Beaver Committee established, Sir Hugh Beaver. Eventually led landmark Clean Air Act 1956, but immediate aftermath focus containment. Both lingering political fallout scale human cost. 4,000 number case seemed closed, but case not closed. Initial government tally on precise bureaucratic way. Profound miscalculation. Not lie but fraction truth. Failed grasp insidious lingering nature. Smogus alt human body. Poison not simply vanish winds blue sea. Remained lungs blood streams tens thousands Londoners. Great smog not swift executioner all victim. For many slow one. Initial count only covered 5 days event. Like measuring impact battle counting only fell field. Ignoring thousands later die wounds. Weeks months following December 1952. Death rate London not return normal. Remained stubbornly under Fingram high. Doctors across city saw huge spike respiratory cardiovascular illnesses. Elderly people survived fog itself, become pneumonia January. Middle-aged men pre-existing heart conditions. Suffered fatal corona rise February. Death certificates individuals not mentioned smog. Listed proximate cause death. Congestive heart failure, acute bronchitis, myocardial infarction. True culprit agent pushed already compromised bodies over edge. Chemical assault endured December. Real investigation silent musker began years later. Carried not government committees, but epidemiologists, medical statisticians. Pouring dry meticulous records Registrar General. Use more sophisticated lens. Instead looking only 5 days fog. Analyzed mortality data, entire winter 1950-53. Mapped weekly death tolls, plotted graph. Result not sharp spike but great terrifying mountain. Peak mountain early December. Broad high slopes. Extended months either direction. Calculated excess. Deaths not just 1 week, but entire period December 1950 to through March 1953. Subtracted normal, expected number death, typical winter. What left smog true brutal legacy. Modern studies conducted decades hindsight. Advanced statistical methods converged new darker figure. Number not 4,000. Closer 12,000. 12,000 men, women, children killed air breathed. Initial estimate missed 2/3 victims. Staggering revision reframing Great Smog from severe public health crisis. One deadliest environmental disasters modern history. Silent peacetime, cataclysm scale, difficult comprehend. Even number 12,000 dead. Not capture full extent human cost. For every person, I'd many more made seriously chronically ill. Smog inflicted estimated 100,000 cases. Serious respiratory illness population London. Young children inhaled acidic air, suffered permanent lung damage, leaving vulnerable illness wrest lives. Persistent London cough, once grim music whole joke, became chronic debilitating reality generation. City hospitals filled smog walking wounded years come. Financial cost lost productivity healthcare expenses colossal. Cost quite shortened pain filled lives incalculable. Uncovering silent massacre revealed uncomfortable truth. Great smog not act God. Man made disaster. Inevitable results series deliberate choices. Choice power great city cheap high sulfur coal. Choice allow millions domestic chimneys pump unfiltered smoke air. Choice made ministry fuel power post-war years. Sell best quality low sulfur coal export turn precious currency. Leaving Londoners burned earthiest toxic dregs nutty slack. Consequence, century industrialization. Air-treated open sewer-free infinite dumping ground. Waste products progress. Anticyclone with a system trap smoke natural phenomenon. Poison wrapped entirely human origin. London quest warmth power, built-on gas chamber. 5 terrible days December simply forgot, open window. Final grim, tally 12,000 souls. Not meaty, or a logical statistic. Invoice delivered city decades collective indifference. When air finally cleared silence left behind different kind. No longer muffled, dim quiet fog itself. Heavy expectant silence follows great terrible revelation. 5 days London's suffocating blank, a tone making. Bright, cold, shockingly clear, light mid-December. City began count cost. Initial figures tricking hospitals, coroner's offices grim enough. Just leading edge statistical storm. True scale catastrophe, not yet understood merely felt. Deep collective trauma, a settled city bones holes Westminster. However initial response practiced masterful denial. This, after all, Britain 50. Nation prided stiff upper lip carrying on not making fuss. Government-led indomitable Winston Churchill. Preoccupied Cold War economic recovery slow dismantling empire. Spot bad weather however severe scene distraction. Minister housing local government, Harold Macmillan. Future Prime Minister known unflappable Edwardian demeanor. Initially dismissed event parliament, simple act God. Meteorological anomaly. Spoke as particularly severe winter flu. Tragic, ultimately unavoidable. Would inquiry no grand investigation. Cause obvious fog. Fog, everyone knew part London Thames, Street Paul's Cathedral. Investigate fog like investigate rain. Position reasonable surface, commonly delivered. Profound miscalculation. Underestimated quiet fury brewing city terraced houses council flats. Failed grasp, not just another pea super. Different man made plague people new. Press sensing shift public mood, not let story go. Newspapers during smog-focused disruption novelty. Now began publish numbers. Ran stories undertakers running coffin. Florists selling wreaths. Interviewed doctors described stark clinical term. Blue-lit patients stroked death wards. Story began build day-day headline. Initial government estimate few hundred deaths. Quickly brutally exposed fantasy. Registrar General weekly statistical returns. Dried Asti publication usually interest only actuaries civil servants. Became front page news. Showed terrifying spike. 4,000 deaths above normal average week December. 4,000 souls. As data following weeks came number kept climbing. Delayed effects lingering respiratory infections. Final toll eventually estimated closer 12,000. Peacetime catastrophe scale major military defeat. Pressure parliament unbearable. Back Benem, PS all parties hearing constituents. Began ask pointed angry questions. Private members bill calling action introduced Labour MP Norman Dodds. Became relentless passionate advocate change. Refused let Macmillan calm dismissal stand. Rally counts suffering parliamentary record. Turning bureaucratic debate from public grief anger. Sheer weight evidence undeniable calculus mortality. Forced government hand. Strategy waiting problem forgotten failed. Memory black a fresh grief fall. Something now clear done. July 1953 reluctance. Almost palpable. Government announced formation new body. Committee air pollution. Classic British solution crisis form committee. But no ordinary committee. Designed produce dusty report at shelf. Man chosen chair Sir Hugh Beaver. Formidable civil engineer industrialist. Managing director Guinness Brewery. Not politician career civil servant. Man systems logistics practicalities. New build things make work crucially analyze why failed. Beaver given clear sweeping mandate. Inquire nature, causes effects air pollution. Identify practical measures necessary prevent recurrence. Beaver Committee came known set were. Not political fire, cold methodical determination. Gathered evidence, every conceivable quarter. Meteorologist's Met Office, explains science temperature inversions. Doctors London Great Teaching Hospitals. Presented harrowing clinical data respiratory failure. Engineers testified mechanics industrial furnaces domestic grates. Economists calculated cost smog. Not lives lost work damaged buildings healthcare expenditure. Conducted site visits. Descending boiler rooms power stations Battersea. Peering humble fireplaces East End homes. Analyze substance smog itself. Commissioning studies chemical composition soot. Precise nature sulfur dioxide particles done damage. Over year worked quietly diligently. Assembling mountain evidence. November 1953 issued interim report warning shot government bail. Confirming smog no natural disaster. Direct consequence pollution primarily burning coal. Recommended immediate short-term measures. Then November 1950 for final report landed. Masterpiece clarity. Irrefutable logic. Condemning indictment century. Industrial domestic practice. Report stated without ambiguity. Principal culprit coal smoke. Not just Great Plumes power stations factories. Aggregated smoke millions small inefficient open coal fires private homes. Every charming glowing hearth cozy grate. Tiny unregulated chemical factory pumping poison air. Committee recommendations radical transformative. Called fundamental shift nation relationship. Primary source energy. Called new air control regulation responsibility. Called decent clean air. Provided government. Detailed practical politically undeniable mandate change. Age blissful ignorance over. Age action about begin. Beaver Committee final report delivered. Autumn 1954. Not document easily ignored filed away. To precise conclusion stock. Laid blueprint revolution. Not violent quiet legislative reach. Every home factory land. Central unavoidable recommendation. Creation termed smokeless zones smoke control areas. Concept simple profoundly disruptive. Proposed area town. Become illegal emit dark smoke any chimney. Not ban fire itself type fire. Designated zones householders no longer permitted. Burn raw bituminous skull open grates. Switch smokeless fuels. Co-anthracite manufactured solid fuels. Burned high heat little smoke. More radically convert homes heated gas coming wonder electricity. Direct challenge cornerstone, British domestic life. Coal fire more source heat cultural institution. Symbolic heart home. Idea government tell citizen could not burn own fireplace. Many astonishing intrusion. Political hurdles immense. Question supply. Nation produce enough smoke as fuel. Meet demand. National Coal Board gas industry assurances. Logistics daunting. Cost converting home coal great modern appliance not cheap. Committee anticipating recommended government provide substantial grants. Homeowners covering 70% cost conversion. Pragmatic recognition national problem required. Nationally funded solution. Could not simply order people cleaner help afford. Legislative process began bill drafted debated refined. Not simple journey. Objections industrialists feared cost upgrading furnaces. Building taller chimneys. Another key recommendation Beaver Report. Design disperse remaining pollutants far above ground level. Arguments cherished individual liberty collective well-being. Memory December 1950 to powerful political propellant. Ghost 12,000 victims haunted debate. Silent unanswerable argument action. Bill championed Parliament, new Minister Duncan Sandys. Possessed political will predecessor Macmillan. Initially lacked. Sandys steered legislation House Commons. Framing not restriction charter public health. Modernizing step nation aspiring brighter cleaner future. Finally 5th July 1956. Nearly 3 years smog descended. Clean Air Act received royal assent passed law. Landmark peace legislation first kind world. Deal air pollution comprehensive systematic way. Power lay decentralized gradualist approach. Gave local authorities power survey boroughs. Approval central government designate smoke control areas. Allowed policy rolled intelligently. Starting most polluted urban centers, expanding outward. London City suffered most first began implementing new law. 1 boroughs, City London Westminster Holborn, declared themselves smoke control areas. Notices posted public information campaigns launched grants available. Slow painstaking great conversion began. Act also for main industrial pollution. New furnaces installed factories law smokeless. Existing factories required minimize emissions dark smoke. Principled old chimney enshrined law. Power stations new generation built Thames estuary. Designed towering stacks over 600 feet high. Engineered punch residual fumes high atmosphere. Diluted dispersed prevailing winds. Essence to prone detect. Reducing total smoke produced or cleaner fuels home. Ensuring unavoidable emissions heavy industry. Cast far away lungs populace. Implementation vast logistical exercise take decades fully complete. Process persuasion much enforcement. Health visitors doored or explaining benefits new fuels. Adverts newspapers nascent television service. Extolled virtues clean modern gas, electric heaters. Generation Britain's familiar sight coalmen. Face permanently ingrained black dust. Humping heavy sacks garden path. Began fade. Replaced gas fitter electrician. Change not instantaneous, slow incremental cleansing. Winter fogs not vanish overnight, still bad days. Moments air grew thick yellow. Became less frequent, less severe. Dense opaque suffocating pea soup arrest Victorian legend, 1950 to nightmare. Thing passed. Clean Air Act 1956 more law profound statement. Moment society collectively decided. Convenience burning cheap, dirty fuel. No longer worth price paid human lives. Quiet bureaucratic deeply civilized triumph. Public health, industrial inertia. Scientific evidence political denial. London learn its lesson hardest way imaginable. Doing created model, entire world follow. Air Britain never perfectly clean. Because Act never again killer epic scale. Legacy Great Smog 1950 to not end passage Clean Air Act. Echoes reverberate day. Quiet persistent hum beneath noise modern world. London itself, effect sacked, became visible following years, decades. Slow motion revelation city, rediscovering itself. Architectural face London began change. Centuries grand buildings, street poles, houses, parliament, British Museum. Cloaked uniform, black carbonaceous grime. Icons, smoky empire. Beginning 1962's Great Cleaning campaign underway. Stone facades that carried away. Revealing pale Portland stone, warm brick. Hidden generations. London literally brightened. City color palette shifted, monochrome, something vibrant. Ecology city began slow, remarkable recovery. Thames century, biologically dead, the exigmenting sewer began breathe again. Cleaner air meant less acid rain, less direct deposition pollutants water. 1957 survey found fished idle Thames. 1972 effect Clean Air Act, environmental regulations hold. Fish began return. Today river home over 20 species fish. Seals, occasional stray porpoise. Testament resilience nature. Relentless pressure pollution eased slightly. Ferry air London breathe transformed. Average number hours winter sunshine city doubled. Persistent hacking London cough afflicted generations. Faded lexicon urban maladies. P super defining features city identity. Staple Sherlock Holmes stories noir films became historical artifact folk memory. London engineered away most famous lethal atmospheric condition. Most profound echo Great Smog global. Event served stark undeniable turning point. Way understood relationship, human activity, environment. Before 1950, to pollution often seen localized nuisance. Unfortunate necessary price progress prosperity. Smell jobs site thriving economy. Great smog shattered illusion. First time modern technologically advanced society. Presented clear, quantifiable mask casualty proof. Everyday activities create lethal environmental catastrophe. Not distant warfare and famine. A one world sophisticated cities turning poison gas. Realization planted seed. Demonstrated link drawn scientifically politically between specific pollutant coal smoke, specific public health disaster. Crucially proved concerted legislative action effectively solved problem. Clean Air Act 1956 became template case study. Burgeoning environmental movements around world. Foundational text idea, environmental regulation. Scientist 1962 began raise alarms affect pesticides. Rachel Carson's seminal book Silent Spring. Precedent London there. Concerns industrial effluent poisoning rivers. Lib Passage Clean Water Act United States 1972. Logic mirrored British Clean Air Act. Core principle same. Society right responsibility regulate harmful pollution. Protect public health, natural world. Great Smog London therefore, not simply closed chapter history. Recurring parable modern age. Lessons relearned began again. Sprawling megacities 21st century. Specific chemical composition air changed. Fundamental, dilemma. Thick yellow-black sulfurous smog 1952 London. Finds modern equivalent. Grey-brown photochemical haze frequently blanket cities Beijing. Choking clouds particulate matter descend New Delhi. Ozone heavy air stings lungs Mexico City. Source no longer overwhelmingly domestic coal fire. Complex cocktail vehicle exhaust industrial emissions. Agricultural burning coal-fired power plants. Oft unlocated hundreds miles away. Yet story reads same. Theory a rapid economic growth industrialization. Prioritizes progress above else. Population becomes accustomed certain level air pollution. Normal state affairs. Then specific event perhaps particularly bad air apocalypse Beijing. Visibility drops few dozen meters. Public health emergency declared Delhi pollution levels off charts. Forces moment reckoning. Public outcry amplified social media way unimaginable 1950 seconds. Creates political pressure. Governments often initially reluctant for stat Commission studies implement emergency measures, restricting traffic, temporarily shutting factories, eventually begin slow difficult process, enacting enforcing stricter long-term environmental regulations. Echoes or Hugh Beaver Committee heard, work every modern scientific panel convened, advise government air quality standards, spirit Clean Air Act alive every international climate accord, every municipal ordinance, seeks create low emission zone. Tragedy London Great Smog taught world vital painful lesson. Atmosphere, not limitless sewer. Tipping point air rely life turn against. 1950 to event warning, shot fired heart industrial revolution's first great city. Serves permanent reminder. Clean air often take granted not given. Fragile achievement, won through tragedy inquiry. Political will choose long-term health population over short-term conveniences fossil-fueled world. Smog long lifted London streets. Shadow still falls upon all.